Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and I would say good afternoon in Japan, where two of our distinguished guests of this panel today are Kyoto and Tokyo, respectively. So, welcome to this first Tokyo panel. We are in this beautiful framework of the Maker Faire in the iconic space of the gasometer, which is a bridge, I would say, between the past and the future. So, the past because this was a very innovative place at the beginning of the 20th century, and now is coming again to be innovative with the Maker Faire and a lot of initiatives putting together by Eni in Italy. And so this panel is named Tokyo Panel because our CSL lab and the panel today will be about discussing the computer science lab of Sony, which is a very special unit and division within Sony. Started in Tokyo more than 30 years ago, and then they opened in 1996 in Paris, and now there is a richer panorama with the new lab in Kyoto and a new initiative in Rome, and we try to tell this story during this 45 minutes. So, but before getting into the details, let me introduce the panelists of today. So let me start with the guest connected from Japan. So Hiroaki Kitano is the president and CEO of Sony CSL. He is also in charge of the AI initiative of Sony with several centers throughout the planet. Yesterday was very kind to deliver the opening speech at the opening conference. Grateful also because it was in the night of Tokyo, so very late. So thanks again, Hiroaki, for this, and also for being with us today. So good afternoon, Hiroaki.
And good afternoon.
And then we have Lana Sinapayan, who is a researcher at CSL Japan, and recently, since a year, I guess, she has been the founding member of this new initiative, this new lab in Kyoto. I guess, Lana, you are in Kyoto, right? You were showing me a nice image of Kyoto outside.
I hope you can see the beautiful river and buildings.
We can see through the glasses.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, fantastic.
One of the best places in Kyoto.
Great view from my
great
house.
view. Yes, lucky to get that place.
So Lana has a very interesting research agenda, and she will tell us in a second. And the last but not the least speaker is besides me, Luciano Pietronero, who is a physicist of complexity and complex systems, former professor at Sapienza University of Rome, but now, very importantly, is actually leading this Enrico Fermi Research Center, which also has a museum devoted to Enrico Fermi, so the Genius Nobel Prize of the 30s of last century, and his Ragazzi di Via Panisperna. So the center is actually located in the original premises of Sapienza. So the first physics department of Sapienza was located in that premises. And the reason why Luciano is here is, of course, now there is a big excitement about the Nobel Prize in Complexity to Giorgio Parisi, but also because with CSL, actually, we are running, joint project, and we'll discover little by little about this project, today. So first things first, let's start with what CSL is, which is not well known. CSL stands for Computer Science Lab, and a very special unit, as I said, division within Sony, because it's supposed to be a division devoted to research, basic research, and innovation, slightly disconnected from the needs of the corporation, but somehow thinking forward, thinking ahead in time. And of course, you will find a lot of enthusiasts and interesting researchers at CSL now I would say in the 4 different locations in which CSL is acting. As I said, CSL started with a very bright intuition in 1988 in Tokyo, and after a few years, 8 years after they opened the new lab in Paris, for a curious coincidence, actually 96 was the first year in which I moved for work to Paris, but at that time, actually, I was not in touch with CSL. I didn't know actually what CSL was. Then more recently, in 2020, I would say during the pandemic, they opened this new lab in Kyoto. And very, very recently, actually, a week ago, actually, we opened a new initiative in Rome, also in collaboration with the Fermi Center. So my first question, I guess, would be for Hiroaki Kitano. Hiroaki, so you are probably the witness, the best witness, to tell us about the philosophy of CSL, the history of CSL, and also what are the ambitions of CSL. Hiroaki, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Vittorio. You know, Sony CSL created 1988 with the aim of, providing the platform, like a place for the very creative and talented researcher to do the, whatever research they are interested. But basically, as the name indicates, Sony Computer Science Lab, it was geared towards the computer science. At that time, Sony has been very successful in the, engineering workstation business, which was a news workstation, which no longer exists, but that was one of the most well-sold workstation in Japan. So the founder, Dr. Doi, considers okay, workstation is selling well, but we don't have a basis of computer science. So we need to have a lab dedicated for the computer science to shape the future of computing. And that's how things get started. So Doi recruited Mario Tokoro, who actually is the founding vice president, and then they got started. So the initial 10 years was predominantly in computer science, the operating system, computer language, and all that. And then we evolved into a computer-human interactions, and then the systems biology, econophysics, something that the humans and computing interact, or a computer science help shape the field, and that is the area. And then we further expanded the research area into climate issues, energy issues, and agriculture, which is more the global agenda, which is something that we are facing the mankind. So reason why we are doing this is Sony Computer Science designed to pursue the research for the future of mankind. Let's forget about that Sony first, okay? And then, we are not really, attached to the specific business agenda for the Sony. We have a freedom to do and pick a topic, whatever we think is important for the future. And of course, if your challenge is very, things challenging, important, we're going to build the technology, and some of the technology will be used for the Sony. So we'll actually, we do the technology transfer, and some of the results, some of the transfer resulted in very serious business implication for Sony. For example, some machine learning and statistical analysis work has been applied to the improving the factory operation in Sony, or some physical statistical analysis has been applied to the semiconductor factory in Japan and improve the semiconductor yield, which is a big business for Sony right now. And so, we are really pursuing kind of blue sky research. The researcher can pick whatever they think is important. At the same time, we demand the researcher to actually go and change the world, not just writing a paper, and go to the real world and change the world. And that is something, we set the high bar. Because we set the high bar and then grandiose challenge, whatever we discover, the researcher discovers and develop to solve the problem will be the cutting edge technology, and that's usually useful for somewhere in a Sony. So, all the applications, how the implication business for Sony, I don't really worry about it. I mean, we have a constant flow of business feedback. But I think that's the most important thing for us is, how we can contribute to the world, how we can change the world. Okay, now at the same time, you might, recognize that Sony Computer Science is not a huge organization. We have 30 to 40 researchers, probably including Paris and Rome and Kyoto. I think we have 50 researchers max. And then probably we have for each project, we have engineers. So probably 100 plus. And that will be the maximum number. So it's a small organization. The question we might ask is if that is so small, how are we going to change the world? Okay, so what we actually trying to achieve is we want to be the engine for the influence. We want to be the institution to exercise influence. We want to, show the first step, how you can change the world, how you can do the new way of doing things, the new perceptions, new concept, new ideas, and then get the, people get on board and we get a big movement to change the world. Of course, like with 100 people plus, and we won't be able to exercise the power to change it, but we can exercise the influence, and that's how the Sony Computer Science Lab try to contribute the future of the society. And that's a kind of very short explanation. At the same time, we say the lab, but we are not really constrained with the research. One of the motto we have is act beyond the borders. That means we have to act. We not just stop with the research, but only writing a paper doesn't guarantee that your research outcome will actually feed back to the real world and change the world. So you have to act. At the same time, it's beyond the borders, beyond academic discipline, beyond the national border, beyond the border in between the research and the deployment or the business. Those borders are artifacts of the human society. So we just forget about this. And, so we're going to identify the problem, do the research, and we'll actually deploy by ourselves. And then, of course, since we are small, we like to have partners. We like to have someone with the same mindset to actually work with us and to actually have really big impact in the society. That's kind of a idea how the Sony CSL operates now, probably in the future as well.
Very interesting threads already. So already very many threads you launch. I mean, I guess one important one I like to comment on is about the motivation of CSL, because I discuss with a lot of students and a lot of PhD students, and of course, they are always wondering, what should I do? Should I stay in academia to be somehow pure? Okay. But still, I want to do some application. But it's Sony the right place, or any other companies the right place? Yeah, I guess, I would say CSL, from what you said, could be a very interesting place, for creative people, because, without too much pressure from the corporation, still very, very close to basic research. And then you launched a very important point, which is how to bridge the gap between the prototypes, so the POC, and of course, there are a lot of POCs at CSL, and the actual impact. Okay, perhaps we can come back to this point, at the very end of the panel. So just to carry on a little bit, can you identify or give us 2 or 3 examples of interesting projects and over the years have been developed within CSL?
Yeah, one of the project with the Professor Takayasu has been working on the econophysics and all the statistical analysis. As I mentioned briefly, it was applied for the improving the yield for the semiconductor factory. When the Sony has been producing a cell chip right now, the imager, sensor device, that has been really critical. For any increase in the yield will actually result in the millions of dollars in terms of the Sony's revenue stream. So, that's one project. And also we have a couple of the carve out. For example, a Sineco culture, which is really the ongoing, very interesting project. It's a new kind of agriculture, trying to design the micro ecosystem and then, implant the numbers of crops, not just one. Industrial agriculture implant just the one crops. But Mr. Funahashi's Sineco culture implant hundreds of, 150, 200 one, and then they try to manage the micro ecosystem, because he has a database of a terroir and what is the best match for the crops and vegetable. And then if one crops and what is the predator insect coming in, what is the predator of the insect, so we can design the complex ecosystem to and manage it. And that would be the project. We recently created a company to make a scalable business out of this, and he has the farming area, which is in collaboration with the people in the Burkina Faso and in other areas in the world as well. And another example is the open energy system, which is a renewable microgrid system. It has been deployed in a couple of places, and I think with the climate issues became more urgent. Those research should be, very important. I think we're in a phase of making, a business deployment. We actually made the all technology open source, because we recognize this is not something only Sony should be able to do, and then our technology should be made open, available to everyone, because we don't have time. We have to really act now. So rather than trying to get the Sony exclusivity, we decided, okay, let's open this and have everyone welcome to use our technology, because that is the best way we can contribute to the future of this planet.
This is a very, thank you, Hiroaki. This is a very important point about open source and open hardware, because this is the way in which perhaps we can address the point of scaling up the solution from POC to actual deployment. So thanks a lot for the time being, Hiroaki. I'll get back to you in a few minutes. But let's move now to Lana Sinapayan, who I said actually is one of the founding member of the new lab in Kyoto. So Lana, I mean, first, I would like to ask you something about yourself, because you do very interesting and amazing things, and perhaps you can tell us a little bit more about what you do before moving to specifically what CSL Kyoto is doing.
Sure. So I work in artificial life, which is a relatively small field, where we're trying to find the difference between living organisms and non-living things by building life in artificial systems. And this might seem like a trivial question, like we already know what life is, but actually there is no definition of life right now. There's no good definition that everyone accepts. So that's my field. And I specialize in computer simulations, especially evolution, so genetic algorithms, learning, everything that is perception, prediction, leading to my research to in visual illusion recently. And also I work on the detection of life in the universe. So can we tell whether a planet has life on it or not without sending a robot there? Recently, I'm also developing a web platform for pushing for a different way to do open science, because I think there is no future in science without open science. And the only question is about the details. How will it look like? So that's basically my activities as a researcher.
Lana, I was struck by, something I read on your CV, in which you say, I'm interested in sanitizing science practices. What do you mean? What do you mean by this?
I mean that we know what science should look like. You know, we have these ideal images of science, and we know that science doesn't look like what it's supposed to do. You have a lot of fraud, and we have seen that a lot with, for example, the COVID crisis. Lots of papers with fake data or just bad science. And I think with the increase of open science and preprints, we also need to scale the way that we review science, and we remove the bad science from this mountain of research that comes out.
Very, very interesting. So, and now coming more specifically to CSL Kyoto. So first of all, congratulations for putting together this new initiative. But can you tell us, what is it? What is the ambition and what is going on right now?
Yes, so the Kyoto lab, as you said, was open in 2020 in the center of Kyoto with the goal of refocusing technology to match human values. So as you probably know, Kyoto has a very long history, but it's not just an old city. It still has a capacity to innovate while also preserving their heritage. And so this is kind of what we want to do in this lab. We want to have innovation while also mixing in some tradition, and going back to the idea of technology serving people and not people working for technology. So it's a very small lab. We have some students, some staff members, and 3 main researchers. The director of the lab is Jun Rikimoto, who is recognized for his work on human-computer interaction and human augmentation, whether it's in VR or in real life. And the second member is Yuichiro Takeuchi, who works mostly on architecture, notably printable gardens, so the gardens that you can print using a 3D printer, and more recently, illumination devices. And then there is me.
Very, very interesting. I'm wondering, also linking with the discussion we are having about the bridging the gap between the POCs and the deployment. I'm wondering whether you are already running collaboration with other institutions in Kyoto, like university. In the spirit of this public-private partnerships.
So we have started some collaborations with local institutions in Kyoto. It's not yet completely official, but we really want to have this connection with the local community, because the main, let's say the main interesting aspect in being a small lab in a small city is that you can connect with the people who are around you more easily than if you are in a very, very big organization.
Very interesting. Thanks a lot, Lana, for the time being. So I'll get back to you at the end of the panel for the closing remarks. Now, perhaps, just to close the circle, we can probably say, a few words about the other labs in Europe, and specifically Paris, and more recently, Rome. Perhaps the best way to do this is to show you a little video. It would be 1 minute, or slightly more than one minute. To illustrate, what the activities of CSL Paris and presumably also Rome in the near future will be. So I would ask the studio to pass the video for, just now. Thanks a lot.
The Sony Computer Science Lab of Paris celebrates the 25th anniversary of its foundation by showcasing its researches and technologies to the public in occasion of the 9th European edition of the Maker Faire at the iconic Rome Gasometer, with Sony as gold partner of the event. Meet our sustainability researchers and find out how robotics and artificial intelligence can support small farmers in their work. Test the tools developed by our language team to increase our understanding and improve our creativity. Hear our musics team new generation of production tools based on artificial intelligence at the service of the artists. Engage in the creativity team tools to boost innovation. Plan your ideal city. Write a collaborative story. Learn about recommender systems. Check how we predict success. Discover also Futurium, the new Sony CSL initiative in Rome, and its new research lines on how science and AI can help us to design cities of the future, and the new tools to face the challenge of misinformation and improve social dialogue. Discover our interactive installations and experience the future at the Sony Computer Science Laboratories area at the 9th European edition of the Maker Faire in Rome from the 8th to the 10th of October 2021. Or follow our live stream on YouTube.
So this is a very short introduction to the activities of CSL Paris. And of course, most of these activities will be showcased here, in the physical space here at the Maker Faire. But of course, everyone also online can follow, the activities through our streaming channel. So actually, through streaming, we'll have a series of panels like the one of today, but also a series of interviews to the individual researchers, discussing about their specific research. So we have one pavilion, you cannot see it now. We have one pavilion, one big pavilion here with a lot of stands, but also outside we have another pavilion devoted to agriculture and robotics and AI. Now, you have seen, in the video we mentioned that at the end this new initiative in Rome, and it's a real pleasure, to introduce Professor Pietronero just besides me, who's, as I said, is the president of the Enrico Fermi Research Center in Rome. And we signed a scientific agreement, for a joint lab and joint collaboration about several topics. But before that, Luciano, can you tell us a little bit more about what Centro Fermi is? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Actually, the words of Kitano suggest me to start from a broader perspective, namely my own history. Namely, I've been professor at Sapienza for 30 years, even more. But before this, my first 10 years of scientific work were in industry, in US with the Xerox and in Braun Boveri in Switzerland. Well, when I tell people in Italy that these were the years where I had the maximum freedom, scientific freedom, people are surprised. They think industry can be, very greedy and just to the latest practical thing, while my own experience has been extremely positive. There was a broad view, as Kitano also proposes for CSL. And so I came out of these 10 years of industry with a very positive impression. Of course, I had a positive impression also from academia, but in many places, they too don't speak much, especially in Italy. So it is a great pleasure for me to somehow to be part of this initiative, where industry and academia speak with mutual respect. There shouldn't be one who runs the business. There should be mutual respect, mutual opportunities, but also it works very well, and I've experienced in my own career. So this is my framework, and I think certainly I want to pursue this in the next years, hopefully. So what is Centro Fermi? The Fermi Center is a new institution, scientific institution, in the famous palace, in the famous building, where Enrico Fermi did most of his activity in nuclear physics and many other fields. So for us in Italy, but also worldwide, is one of the most prestigious locations in the history of science. And now, since a few years, before it was a political building, it was the prime minister area, and now since a few years, it is again a scientific institution. And I have the privilege and the honor to be the president since about 1 year. So the question was, okay, what shall we do? Because the institution is prestigious, but relatively small. So we should not copy the big institutions. We should look for something original, and in which the Enrico Fermi Center has an identity. Now, this reminds me of the startup companies in the business, namely, Apple or Microsoft didn't grow up out of IBM. They grew up out of garages, okay? So the idea is that we can do something similar in science. So there is a broad space in science for new initiatives, which is difficult that they come out of CERN. I mean, CERN is great, or the Institute of Nuclear Physics, or National Research Council with 10,000 people. These institutions have their own tradition. They are basically very good in their job, but they are not agile. They lack, so to say, the spirit of starting some exponentially. I've worked in this institution, so I know very well. I mean, so they are good to do mostly traditional. I mean, the growth of some new flowers is difficult. So we want to have this spirit of making new flowers grow up when they are small. And so this is one point. The second point is my own experience with relation industry academia. And so I find that the CSL is a perfect match of this type of interaction. What do we want to do in practice? Well, we have a number of projects already, but in general, we want to develop a philosophy based mostly on data science, algorithmics, artificial intelligence, and applied to a number of things. We at the Fermi Center have developed some of what is called the economic fitness methodology, which is a criterion to define an intensity of capability for a country. And this methodology is scientific, so it can be reproduced, and it has been adopted by the World Bank of Washington to monitor the progress of countries instead of the GDP. No, not just money, but capability. So this is a scientific substitution of something a little rude. From the area of complexity into the two of the most mainstream economic institutions in the world. And CSL, we want to do something very similar. So a typical application is the sustainability objectives of the UN. Other application can be the city structure, smart city, and the dynamics of information and fake news. So these are the three pillars in which we have specific action today. But, we want to be open to the new challenge of a society which is always evolving and presenting new challenges. So these are where we start, and we look forward also to other questions.
No, thanks a lot. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I remember, one of the first time we discussed about the possible collaboration between CSL and CREF, Centro Fermi, was, the sentence you said, and the sentence was, we need the right to fail.
Yes,
okay.
That's right.
Can you tell us a bit more about
this? This is my slogan. This is my slogan to make politicians curious. because everybody says I write projects that can be successful 100%, which is a little bit ridiculous. I mean, because if you really do this, it means you are very conservative. So again, if we take inspiration from the firms in the startup world, the idea is that 90% for this failure. So something like this seems to be not accepted today in science, because if we write a research project, you have to write it in such a the obvious continuation of what you did before to be 100%. So that with 100% you can build the railway, but you cannot explore what you don't know. So my slogan is we want to have the privilege of failing. Of course, it's a little bit of a joke, but it means we want to be a little more risky and more adventurous. But thank you for the question. I forgot to say myself.
No, but it's very interesting. I mean, it's counterintuitive because, of course, I mean, each of us wants to be successful, but still, in order to get there, you have to accept the failures. I mean, perhaps, I mean, many failures before getting to the right results. I mean, let me ask Hiroaki what he thinks about this right to fail.
As a researcher, our business is failure. Business is managing failure. If I completely agree that statement just made. It goes like if your project is 100% guarantees, that means like that's not significant. You're not challenging anything, right? I mean, because you just do it, and success is guarantees, and anyone will be able to do it. And then so I think like we need to embark on the challenge that is potentially high risk. But at the same time, failure is not a purpose. You should manage the failure, probability of success to be maximum, obviously. I mean, sometimes people say, like, I'm taking risk, but a risk for what? I mean, taking the risk is not the purpose, okay? And you have to manage the risk. But still, like, if you embark on the new challenge no one have done before, of course, like, there are high chance that the reasonable chance that you're going to fail. But at the same time, like, you can turn around the failure. Something you consider that to be a failure could be the step for the next big success. I mean, so I think like, managing the risk is the core part of the business where we are engaging in, particularly in the research.
Definitely. So Luciano, of course, I mean, I was struck by the possibility to have a joint research initiative with Centro Fermi. But what is your take on this? So why you wanted to engage with an entity like Sony, or in particular, I mean, CSL, for this challenge?
So first, the philosophy of making a bridge between academia and industry, I think is fundamental in Italy and full of opportunities. For example, in our analysis, Italian science, I mean, blue sky science, I mean, purely academia, is pretty good. But in Italy, what is lacking or is weak is tech transfer. So, for example, Italy is a place in which we could hire many smart people for this task, which is not very developed. So, in my opinion, Italy is an opportunity of young talents to go into this type of bridge. So, this is my philosophy. So, building bridge between academia and the science. There should be, of course, many times you have negative experience. I mean, some industry looks for, cheap work from academia. This is not what we want. We want to be, so to say, in a situation of mutual respect and to be adventurous. Okay, so as I said, my own experience has been that industry for me was very free. Of course, we also did applied work and work that was useful at the moment. So we had a sort of pleasant attitude towards any problem. But this permitted us also to look at the blue sky and to do things which became my most cited papers in academia. So from applied projects, it developed a more scientific project. So this I have experienced, and I want to transmit this feeling. especially in Italy, I think is an opportunity to have bright people to participate to this game because it is fun and it has space for success, also for you. Okay, both. So this is my general philosophy. Second, why CSL? Okay, of course, one reason is you, Vittorio. Okay, we have been collaborating a lot. We know each other very well. We trust each other and we respect and
Do we?
appreciate. These things are very important. I mean, to have this. Then Sony, I mean, CSL, I knew also before, I mean, from the work of the other directors and was always present at conference and it always looked like an open window to a brilliant activity. So I had a general positive feeling. And now we can somehow together we can define these three things I mentioned and maybe even more. So this is basically the idea. I mean, we accept applied tasks with respect because I mean you have to do something useful, but also we would like to have in parallel with this a more adventurous and I mean scientific but useful activity. I think data science, in a broad sense, is a beautiful experiment because it has opened up new perspectives in essentially all fields. Myself, I've mostly done work in what is called economic complexity, which means try to define a scientific approach to economics. When people ask me, why did you go into economics? My answer is, I never went anywhere. I just considered certain economic fundamental economic problems like industrial patents and products and so on. So I consider that this as a problem of scientific nature, which means we want to be reproducible, we want to be testable, and we want to be reliable and also brilliant in the sense of the ideas. So I think for this type of action there is a lot of space in any field, and I think we are going to explore some together with a lot of fun.
In the spirit of this sort of scientific incubator or scientific startups, we already started with 2 or 3 projects. So one is devoted to sustainable cities, and here actually I make a further are many examples in that direction. The other one is the information and social dialogue, which is highly important in our society, connected to many different things and many different challenges. And of course, the third one would be how to merge all this also with this new concept of economic fitness and complexity. And the idea is how to get down to the level of city for this kind of concept, or even at the level of companies. But these are if you wish, I mean, are the first 3 seeds, right?
Yeah.
Then next Monday we'll have a meeting at CREF. I mean, a joint meeting between CREF and all the researchers here present of CSL Paris present at the Maker Faire to explore, I mean, other possible avenues. So we'll discuss about music, we discuss about agriculture, we discuss about language and possible applications, and we'll also listen from Centro Fermi researchers about their activities, which could have an overlap with all this. So I guess in this spirit of not committing to failure, but seeking for success, even accepting failure, I guess this could be an interesting pathway.
Maybe can I add?
Please,
Yeah. So as far as we are concerned, the economic complexity methodology has been very successful for the analysis of countries. Now this is almost done. Of course, it can be applied to cities, to regions, etc. What is our frontier now is to do something similar for the analysis of companies. This is not a trivial extension. Countries and companies are qualitatively different. Countries are like a big forest with many animals and plants, and company is like a single animal. So the strategy for the company is qualitatively different than the strategy of the country. So the country we have done in analogy with ecosystem stability, and this works very well in practice. I mean, World Bank uses this for the planning of country development. But now, so today, our main objective as a scientific institution in this field is the analysis of companies. And if you help us as a big, important company to give ideas, suggestions, and so on, we would be very glad to collaborate also on this.
Thanks, Luciano. We are getting close to the conclusion of this very interesting panel. So perhaps a last question for Lana about failure. I mean, what would be failure for you, and most importantly, what would be success for you in the next year for CSL Kyoto?
It's very interesting that this topic got brought up, because I gave at least 3 talks about failure this year. My year was a bit focused on failure from a scientific point of view, because to give an example, AI is a field that is very focused on success, right? You want to beat the other with more performance or something, you have to sell your algorithm and you have to say it's very successful. And then when somebody discovers a failure in your algorithm, it's a big earthquake. It's this huge thing, because your algorithm could hurt somebody, or it's just a failure that is so weird that it shows that your AI was not working as we thought it was. And so my year has been a bit focused on getting people to aim for failure in a scientific way. Like, you want to have algorithms that fail in a way that you can understand. And that's if you can match this failure with a human failure, then you are able to say, yes, my algorithm might be working like a human brain, for example, or an organism. So failure from a scientific point of view, it's a very interesting thing to investigate. And although I wouldn't make my goal in life to fail, but I think we shouldn't shy away from failure. We should investigate it as a scientific phenomenon.
Thanks, Lana. Very, very interesting take about this. So, Hiroaki, perhaps a last question for you. I mean, we discussed about bridging the gap between the POC, so the prototypes, and the possible impact. So, how do you see the role of CSL in this challenge? I mean, we can think about joint labs, which are doing already joint collaboration, also PPP, so private partner, public partnerships. But what would be your take on this? What would be your ambition, and what would be the vision for CSL on this?
Yeah, I think like in a way that we actually bring our research into the reality, we are not really constrained with the methodology of how to achieve it. For example, like we can actually roll out that transfer to the Sony Corporation for their business, or we can create the startup company, or we actually create like non-profit organizations or work with the industrial consortium, for example, or like collaboration with the other research institutions for like a larger initiative. I think we are not constrained with the approach. I think the most important thing is to make things happen. I think like we don't want to actually tie our hand and then how we do that. At the same time, with the Corona pandemic, and then what we have gained is actually the more flexibility in the lifestyle, work style, and where you work from and how you work from. I mean, we haven't like a preconception that we're gonna actually, meet at the office or lab. We can actually work at home, but at the same time, it was not this explicit, right? So like, that's one of the reasons why I created Kyoto is like we want to have like a Kyoto to be, off of the Tokyo operation and do something really new by the people in Kyoto. So I'm not really touching anything in Kyoto. I just wishing I would like to visit Kyoto someday and have very nice cuisine, which is Kyoto is famous for. And that's the only request I'm pressing at this moment. So like then Kyoto has a freedom. And then Paris, Vittorio is doing a super job. Initiating all the initiative, and now we have a Rome. So like CSL itself is experimental stage in terms of organization. We are always experimenting. The CSL itself is a research on the way how the organization should transform in the post-corona era. So we're probably gonna have like a more diverse organization maybe, and then where people work with, and then where people work from, and that would be more dispersive. So that one of the concepts I raised, as like explain the future direction of CSL is dispersive organizations. Being dispersive means you see like things in different angle, right? You have the prism, like or the light beam coming in, you see the rainbow outside. That's dispersion in terms of optics. And then at the same time, if you know the dispersive, like optical fiber is something disperse and it converge. Converges when idea mingle and then I come up with a new idea, and then you see the dispersions, and you see like all the diversities, very explicit. So like also like a dispersion mean that you penetrate into the materials. So like we want to penetrate into the agriculture community, penetrate into the fake news kind of like a media community. We disperse into like an urban planning community. So like to achieve our purpose, which is to exercise influence, I think we need to be dispersive in a way. At the same time, to have like advantage of Sony CSL being a very diverse organization with people with diverse background, diverse idea, we want to have like a convergence as well. So we want to actually see like interrelationship with the dispersions and the convergence, and that's something like a little bit challenging. But I think we should be able to achieve that in a global scale. So I think like we don't really want to constrain the way we do, but like I think we want to always keep changing by ourselves, and not just like topic, but like a way we work and the way the organization is supposed to be in the future, in the coming days. So that's I think it's a never-ending journey, I guess, and that makes it excites me a lot. And I think like I'd like to congratulate the opening in operation in Rome, because the very topic that the Rome is putting forward right now, like a fake news, like a sustainable urban systems, and then all that, actually really fit with very important topic in the post-corona, where we should be going. And the same for the Kyoto. The Kyoto is talking about what is actually the real wealth or like a value of the human being. And that's actually the kind of a really interesting agenda to really seriously look into where we should be going after the Corona time. And I think that's really, really important. So my expectation is very high. So like my demand for the Kyoto and Roma is actually very high. And then I'm pretty sure that, my CSL members and, collaborating partner will be able to come up with something really wonderful that will actually benefit the future of the mankind.
We look forward to it, actually. And just adding a little thing, to what you said, Hiroaki, very, very important. So the point is, I see around also, considering the extension of AI and machine learning, a lot of initiatives devoted to optimize something, okay? But I guess the situation in which we live now, is not to be optimized, has to be perhaps rethought completely or reinvented. So we are sort of jumping in another part of the phase space. And of course, this is really uncharted territory. So there is nothing to optimize. At some point, there will be something to be optimized. But as you mentioned, the idea of home working, is disruptive. You have to change completely the way in which you construct companies and institutions to adapt to these new needs. So I guess we are at the end of this panel. It's been exciting for me to discuss with all of you. Thanks a lot, Hiroaki, for being with us yesterday and today. Thanks a lot, Lana. We look forward to the moment in which you could visit Rome at some point, hopefully next spring or anytime soon. Thanks a lot, Luciano, for being with us. It's also for accepting this challenge together. For this.
It's
project.
my pleasure.
And of course, we remind everyone that our stream channel is open almost all the time. During the day, and so follow our stream channel or visit us here at the Maker Faire. Thanks a lot, everyone.